even the darkness in life is a gift. It forces you to go within, to connect with the light of your being and true essence. Every experience is really part of our soul's curriculum to help awaken us to our true light.
Hello guys, welcome to Easy A, where we help you get that easier in life. I'm your host, Alexis Wren, and
I'm Allie Michelle.
We have a very special guest, very special guest. We just had a 15-minute conversation with him, and I'm already so excited for you guys to meet him. He's a speaker, author, and he's one of our dear friends, Kute Blackson. Welcome to Easy A.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here.
I'm so honored, so excited, so blessed.
I mean, we're just so lucky to have you here. Truly,
we got you. He's like, we have a flight. He's like, I have a flight at 12 p.m. It has
I have
to be
a son. I don't know. Like, small window.
Yeah.
I want to give a little context to how we first met years ago. I was so inspired because you just burst into the room like this force of nature.
I don't even remember. By the way.
You don't remember?
I swear I'm not quite remembering. Tell me.
It was so impactful to me, and he doesn't remember. Yeah. It's fine. I was like 18 years old, and we were at Jeannie's, and we were having tea.
Yes.
But you were just so alive and full of energy, and I had never met someone so just, it was like life was rippling out of you. I don't know how else to say it.
Wow.
And we were having a very deep conversation, and you were looking at me with those X-ray eyeballs of yours. And halfway through, you stood up and you're like, I can feel it. It's time to go now. But it was great meeting you all. And you just...
Wow.
And I was so inspired because I've always known you to have such an interesting relationship with time too. Like if you feel the current of your life moving in a different direction, you follow it. So I also want to just start there because you wrote a book called The Magic of Surrender. And it's such an incredible story. And I think that's just such a great way to introduce people to you is that story. So would you mind?
Which story? Which part of the story?
The story of when you set out to write the book and then kind of the adventures from there.
Yeah, I think when I set out to write the book, I had an intention to write a different book. You know, this was not the book I wanted to write. It was not the book I thought I was going to write. I tried to write every other book but this. And after my first book was a bestseller, I thought, you know, I'm going to like game the system and write a mega bestseller and, you know, like... So I remember I started to put all of the different titles together, like The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck and The Magical Art of... So it was like the magical, subtle art of, you know, something. Just mashing all this stuff together. And none of it felt real. None of it felt authentic. None of it felt like really true. I couldn't look myself in the mirror and feel like in integrity. And so the only word on this sort of whiteboard I had mapped out was the word surrender, a small word at the bottom of the board. And I thought, oh shit, that's the book. And it was so undeniable, uncontrollable. It was beyond me that I tried to resist it for a moment. And then I felt the soul of the book. And I felt the book that was seeking to be written, not the book I wanted to write. And it called me. And so I just surrendered to it. And everything about my life and my childhood and my parents and everything started to make sense, you know? And I felt as though this is the book I was meant to write. And so sometimes we have an idea of how we think something should be and a relationship should be, a friend should be, life should be. But sometimes life has its own energy, its own intention, its own intelligence, you know? And so when I surrendered, everything flowed. And it was really inspired by also my mother, who passed away. It was just, you didn't get to meet my mother. Jeannie got to meet my mother. But she was, I only really realized how special she was when she passed away. And in a nutshell, my mother was diagnosed with stomach cancer. And it was intense. You know, if you've ever lost someone, it's a heart cracking. Wide open. And so I began flying back and forth from LA to London to be with my mother every month and sit with her in chemo and love her and take walks with her. And this went on for a year. What started out as I would say the worst year of my life became the best year of my life because I got to just be with my mother and do things with my mother that I didn't prioritize. We just took walks and sat around and had tea. All the things I thought were a waste of time became everything. And so in that process, I realized that the only regret I ever had in my whole life was not spending more time with my mom, And so it really put a lot of things in perspective for me in terms of what was really important. And so during this process, around 7 months into her journey of cancer, the doctors finally said to her, there's nothing else that we can do for you. So basically, you're going to die. Get your affairs in order. I'm in the room. She's in the room. They tell us this news in the most compassionate way. And I start crying. I'd been preparing for this. And, I'm a pretty strong guy. And I believe in life and, consciousness, that we're not the body. But when you, at least for me, the reality of the person I love the most dying just broke me. And outside, I went to my mother and I said 2 questions. Are you afraid? Like, the time is coming. Like, you're going to die. And I realized she would never meet my child, never meet my wife, never, there were so many trips I wanted to take, so many things I wanted to do that I thought I had time. And in that moment, I realized she would never get to experience these things, And so I looked my mother in the eyes and I said, are you afraid? And she said, this little Japanese woman, little tiny Japanese being, said, no, I'm not afraid.
Wow.
Because I know I'm not this body. This body is just a temporary vehicle for my soul. And even though this body will go at some point, I will be guiding you from the other side. And I can tell you story after story where I have felt my mother's spirit guiding me in so many profound ways that I would seem miraculous, And I felt the conviction of her soul, her being. Like, I thought, shit, my mother is like, she's an enlightened being. And I didn't know it. Like, she knew who she was in essence. And she never talked about it. She didn't, have to get on camera and like me and speak about it. She was just living it. And I saw she was living this her entire life, this knowing, right? And I looked my mother in the eyes and I said, look, I want to be a good son, because I felt like I was a shit son, really, even though I loved her. But, all the Christmases and birthdays and things that I didn't because I was running around saving the world, I thought, wow, it wouldn't have been that difficult to prioritize some things. And so I said, Mom, I want to be a good son. What can I do for you in your final days? Where can I take you? Where do you want to go? What can I buy you? Like, let's do this. And she looks me in the eyes and she says, there's nothing that I need. There's nothing I want. Nothing. I said, nothing. The only thing I want is what God wants for my life. That's it. And I thought, wow. She wasn't like attached to living. She wasn't attached to dying. She was just surrendered to the highest unfolding of her soul's journey. And that's when I saw that she was free, truly free. She was truly surrendered, living surrender. I mean, it's easy to like let go and be surrendered when everything's going our way and we get what we want and we get the success. But in the face of mortality and your death, in the face of losing everything, in the face of things not going according to plan, in the face of heartbreak, can you surrender? And she was living it. And that was the gift of what my mother demonstrated for me, during that time. And that's what really inspired the book that I didn't know I was going to write.
To get to ask those questions is like such a gift to your mother. Yeah. I was tearing up just because my mom, she passed away from cancer as well. And when I was 17. And I feel like I never got to ask those questions because at 17, you're still kind of, you're just becoming, you're like, oh, I'm here. Like, whoa. And also you don't look at your parent as another person. You kind of see them as this, mother, this symbol. So to be able to have those moments, I bet it was so special. And did you have this realization that the book was going to be about surrender before all this went down with your mother? Or was this after?
No, it was after.
It was after.
Yeah. When my mother passed away, I went through a whole process of grieving and it was intense. And I knew that there was a book coming through. Like I could feel like something was like coming out. And I thought it would be about life and death and maybe your last day and no regrets. And, but I was trying to like form it into this like sexy book for the publishers, and sexy, what the people want and what does my audience want and what will people buy? And none of it felt real, And so that one day when it was so apparent to me that like I felt surrender calling me, I felt it pulling me, and I thought, oh shit, this is the book. And that's when I flashed back and I remembered my mother, and it hit me like she's been she was preparing me to write this book. She was telling me this is the book. And there were so many conversations we had during that year that were preparation. There's even like one conversation I have of her on video, and she's speaking Japanese to me, but it was something like, sometimes when we get to the point in our life where we achieve a certain level of success, a certain something, and it's no longer fulfilling. And there comes a point where you have to let go of what you've created so that you can step into that next level of yourself. That's the sort of translation. But we sometimes get so prideful or kind of arrogant about who we've become that we're not able to let go. And I mean, these were conversations we were having, but when I started writing the book, I started remembering all of the conversations. I'm like, wow, she was living surrender her entire, even how she met my father, which is a whole nother story, but she was living surrender her entire life. And so, yeah, when my mother died, I went through this deep process of grieving, and I just let my heart, life continued, but I gave myself the space to really like grieve. I would have these grieving sessions where for the first few months, an hour a day, 2 hours a day, 3 hours every night, I would just cry and write and yell and scream and journal and sing. And, but sometimes I would talk to my mother, and I felt it was as though in allowing the grieving, my heart broke. But it wasn't like my heart broke. It was as though as I would like grieve and feel the heartbreak, it was like I felt the shape of my heart broke open, and there was more love. And in a weird way, I felt more closer to my mother, because our relationship was no longer limited to this human, like I could see her and this is my mother. And this is how I know her to be. And she's this and she's that. And she's got these it was like, it was non-physical. And I could feel the kind of infinite nature of her beingness. Like I felt like I knew who she really was when I couldn't see her. And it was such a profound connection, And I remember saying to her, why did you die before my father? This was a very specific conversation. Why did you die first? Because my father's like 11 years older. So, we just assume, right? And her soul said to me, I died before to gift you the complete karmic healing with your father. And that's when I knew, like, so these last 5 years have been a journey for me. That's when I knew. It's like I wrote the book about surrender, then God put me through a process and a continued process on surrender. And that's when I knew the work I had to do on a soul level with my father. Because, I wasn't angry at him. I'd made peace with my father, and that's a whole nother story. But I made peace with him. But I realized, we weren't close. I didn't call him. It's like, well, you call me too. It takes two to tango. And I realized the work I had to do. And so out of honor to my mother, I decided I would just drop all the shit I had towards my father, that he wasn't a great dad, that he wasn't there for me, that this and that, da. And I realized, he's old school African patriarchal guy, and he can't help himself. This is what he is. He didn't have a father who didn't have a father, and the whole generations didn't have a father, and this is what he is. And this is the best he can do. So I basically decided to, as a spiritual practice, love my father, worship my father, devote myself to loving him as I don't say as a guru, but as a manifestation of God. And he's in Ghana. So I just started calling my father every day. This is after having not called my father in 3, 4, 5 months. Every day I start calling my father, just loving him and how are you and checking in. And then I started to fly from LA to Ghana 3 to 4 times a year, just to sit with him in a room for 4 days and just love him. And it transformed our relationship completely, this whole phrase about like turn the other cheek, right? It was as though the energy, what he gave me, I had every right to give that back to him, which was nothing in a certain sense on one level, but I chose to give him love, and I chose to give him light, and I chose to give him compassion, and I chose to extend grace. And I really believe that is what cleared the karma between us. And I really believe that, we were talking about my wife and my kid. I really believe that karmic shift opened the portal to bring in my wife and my son. And doing that soul work opened that portal. And in October of, I don't know if I've told you this, but October of 2022, I got this strong thing, go to see your father now. I was going to go in December. I went, my wife was pregnant, about a month. So he was the first person I told on that trip. And I wasn't planning to tell him, but something said, tell him. And he said, and I got to the point where I just felt such peace with him. Like we were complete. And I said, hey, Dad, we're having a kid. You're going to be a grandfather. And he said, I had a dream. I had a feeling. And he just smiled. And I told my wife, I don't think my father will live to see my son. And my wife said, no, come on. A month later, he passed away. And I felt the transition, the phase transition of things. Like he was complete. This new soul was coming in. And that circle of life,
You've quite literally healed generation after generation of masculinity.
Yeah,
that's what I'm seeing from you.
And it really felt like that when you meet my son. Both of you. I'd love for you to meet my
We're
son. Come meet my son,
Yeah.
right? My son, it's so interesting. My son is the physical, he's so full of light. All children are, but there's a frequency about him in his vibration that is free of karma, the sort of male generational karma that I even had to work through. It was like he's free of that in his vibration, in his field. And it's so beautiful. So I really think the work that we all do in our inner healing and our clearing, in our healing, in our forgiveness, we don't just do for ourselves. We gift that frequency of consciousness to the next generation. And so now I look at my son and I think he won't have to deal with the energetic static that I had to go through. Yeah. And so to me, that's generational wealth.
I have a question for you, just out of pure curiosity. Do you feel as though, because I do think this world lives off of yin and yang, there has to be a darkness to be a light, it's both. So not that you can know your son's future, but how do you think, or how do you suppose the contrast will show up in his life now that you've cleared all of that karmic? Or how do you think because when we think of healed, this idea of utopia and being, healed souls.
That's another.
Yeah, okay.
This idea of utopia, look, I don't think there will ever be a freaking utopia on the planet.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
In the idea of we're all going to be perfect and all hold hands and all be ascended and Jesus and there's never going to be any wars. We live in a world, this is a 3-dimensional
right?
realm of duality.
Yeah.
It's yin and yang, plus and minus, interdependent polaric opposites. That's the nature of life.
Yeah.
This is the way it is, plus, minus, up, down. So this realm is the realm of density. Yeah. This is, maybe there's other dimensions that, aren't. It's all bliss and love and light. But I think this realm is a realm of limitation. Mm-hmm. And so we incarnate as infinite beings into this limited realm, not to be limited. But the limitation, I think, serves to provide the friction to free us, to force us to access our own infinite nature, which is within. And so for me, the real utopia is not out here, because out here is constantly transitory, impermanent, and changing. To me, the real utopia is that inner state of being that is within us all. Like that quote, the kingdom of heaven is within. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say the kingdom of heaven is in a Lamborghini, a house, a mansion, although they're great, but they're all transitory. And so I think there is a utopia, but it's inside of us, and it's connecting with that deeper dimension of our true essence, our true selves, And so I look at like Jesus. Some people might get a little pissed off here.
Let's go there.
But I look at Jesus. There would be no Jesus without Judas. I look at Mother Teresa. We all love her in a certain way or respect what she did, but there would be no Mother Teresa without the sick people.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
she was a response, a polaric response to something, right? There would be no Mandela without apartheid. So they're a complementary opposite in this three-dimensional realm of duality. And so there would be no Martin Luther King without racism, And so not that it's okay, all right, but if we look at it, I think the real freedom comes when we stop resisting the way it is in this dimension.
Yeah.
And when we can accept the way it is in this dimension, then we stop looking for the freedom out here and go inside. And I think it shifts how we then can relate to life and engage life from a place of openness and, gratitude and celebration and learning and growth. And because I think when we see ourselves as souls, right, then we realize that every difficult, dark, challenging, horrible, every experience is really part of our soul's curriculum to help awaken us to our true light inside. And so when I look at my son, I think that every generation has the possibility, right, of being more awake in that sense. So I see that he won't have to clear the depth of father shit that I had to clear, and he won't have to clear the depth of mother shit that I had to clear. So that time will be spent maybe more in creation and giving his gifts and service, living his purpose, rather than doing the taking out the trash, right? Rather than spending time taking out the trash, he'll spend time painting the house, so to speak. And so, not that the house will ever be perfect, right?
What do you feel like you're currently responding to?
Responding to? Ooh, what do you mean? That's a big question, because
how you were talking about with Mother Teresa and the sick people. And so what do you feel like life is asking of you to show up as right now?
Wow. Ooh.
Okay, Allie. Go. Okay.
Allie's opening up some portals.
You asked me to.
Talk about it right now.
Let's see. It's interesting. On one level, I will say I don't know, right? But what I do feel for myself is something more than before coming through. I'm not quite sure exactly, like, is this, but I've created and impacted people in a certain way for the last 10 years, 15 years in a specific way. But I feel as though what I do feel is the next expression of that transmission coming through in a different way. Exactly what that is, I'm not sure. I feel a more expanded expression, a bigger expression, a more, a less structured expression. And so that's one level, that's one level of things, of what I feel, There's also been, which is a whole nother podcast episode, but there's also been a lot of things that have come out since my father passed away, which I think that have provided a whole nother level of soul tests. I think at every level of evolution and growth, the tests get bigger, the waves get bigger, the puzzle gets harder, the soul puzzle gets harder, the soul tests get even more. And so since my father passed away, there's a lot of stuff that has come out about my father that is not so great. And, he had a whole bunch of kids and this and that. I mean, it's like a mess. And So there's a certain sort of karmic situation that I'm also dealing with family in Ghana. And, it's a freaking movie that I feel somehow I'm meant to, I don't want to say expose, but bring truth to light and hold the dimension of integrity for clearing. And so that's going to be a bit intense, that I feel. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
no, it does.
Yeah. It definitely did.
When I describe you, you have such high integrity, and especially being in the more spiritual space and the way that you guide people on these retreats, which I also want to talk about. Yeah. How has your devotion to integrity, because obviously you probably go through processes with your ego of how do you keep that commitment to it?
The process of integrity integrity is everything for me, because it's all that we have. Because at the end of the day, I have to live with myself. And everyone can go away. But at the end of the day, no matter how many books I write and what people think about me, when the lights are off and it's dark in the middle of the night, I'm with me. And if I can't look myself in the mirror and have peace, none of it's worth it. But what I will say is the path of having a child, a son, that when I look at him, I see myself, and when I look at him, there's a deeper responsibility that I know I have to him, to live for him, to create for him, to set an example for him. Like, you could say he inspires me to up my game of integrity. Even little things like, I was like walking through the apartment and said, oh shit. No, I don't consider it a big thing. I'm not a judgmental person in that way. I say shit all the time. But now when I hear my son saying, oh shit, it's like, oh, I really have to like up my level of living in alignment and being an example for my son, because he watches me, he copies me, he idolizes me, he's doing what I'm doing. And so that puts another level of integrity to how I live, because he's doing what I'm doing and picking up who I'm being more than anything, how I live, being married now, how I live. And it's different also being married than having a girlfriend, because kind of like if I have a girlfriend, I can always leave, I can always like, bye, see you next week, When you're married, it's like, well, see you in 2 minutes, you can't really go anywhere. Where am I going to go? And so the path of being a father and having a wife, which is also a responsibility. There's a responsibility I feel as a man for her heart, for her well-being, to guide her, to set up example of possibility, to take care of her, her joy, her happiness, her growth, her evolution, to provide a space. And so it calls me forward even more to live integrity at a higher level in the smallest things that I do. Not just on the stage or on a video or in a seminar, but like every day, from the standpoint of, oh, I was a bit short, or, the willingness to be in integrity and say, hey, I'm sorry, I apologize, and humble my ego, even when I think I'm right? The willingness to say, if I'm really committed to loving, and I just made a video, be more committed to loving, and then I wasn't so loving, and am I going to be righteous about it? Or am I going to if I'm really committed to loving, am I going to just drop my righteousness and apologize and do what it takes to bring us back into loving? And so that's where I think we all are, but I feel I'm being invited, to like live it, moment, live it as much as possible. And so that's the spiritual path.
I personally want to speak.
Waking down, not just waking up.
Ooh, oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. I firstly want to talk about that transition from girlfriend to wife.
Oh,
Because,
let's talk.
yeah, and just like how has the dynamics changed and like the respect and the story of it, like, and then especially adding a kid into that. We're now at the age where we're kind of seeing that around us as well. And it's a huge transition.
I have some
It really
thoughts.
is.
I have some thoughts.
Yeah.
And I have some thoughts for the ladies too.
Yay. Oh, good.
What was interesting, I was speaking to my wife the other day, and to be honest, it's a different energetic when a man says my wife than my girlfriend. It's something, at least for me, is different. And I think for any real man, it will bring out something different from him as a man. I was speaking to my wife. Actually, she started speaking to me, but I was doing an event last week, and I was having this thought while I'm in the middle of my event, deep dive teaching, but it just popped up like, wow, one day this will be over. Like one day we won't be together. Like this love, this marriage, this one day at death, right? It will be done. And there was a feeling of tender, like, grief of like, shit, she won't be in my life at some point. And there was a sort of heartbreak in that. And one day my son will live without me, And I remember feeling so like raw about that. And it, in a beautiful way though, because it made me feel like the connection to them, and the love for them. And I realized, wow, I don't want this to be over. And that was such a beautiful thing for me to feel as a man, to feel that I had opened up to her to that level where I don't want this thing to be over. And then I came home and she started saying, honey, I was just thinking the same thing. But I didn't tell her what I was thinking. And she started telling me, one day I thought, wow, this will be over. And I said, you won't believe what I was just thinking. And so it's a beautiful thing. When my wife, so I met my wife in Brazil, right? And when my wife came to the US, it was more, we were boyfriend, girlfriend. Deep down, there was a deep soul knowing, but I think there was a certain ego resistance on my part in like truly surrendering. Because for a man, the feminine nature is love. It's just, you're just love. You are love. You want to love, be in love, community love. It's just natural. But for the masculine, relationship is death. Relationship is death. And if you as women understand that, it changes your understanding, because a lot of women take it personally. Like, we got so close and intimate and he just ran away. Like the deeper we went, the deeper, right? And the deeper we went, he just disappeared. He just pulled back. On some level, he went deep into your heart and saw his death.
Wow.
And it freaked him out. And he ran. So it's kind of a compliment to you if that ever happens, because sometimes he'll run away to the woman that is where he doesn't see his death, and it's kind of easier and stay on the surface. And so I saw my death in her heart. I saw my death in her heart, and it was a moment of, I'm not going to escape this one. There's no real excuse I have, because she was so loving and so just, it's like, oh. So I remember as when she was my girlfriend, I was manufacturing all these excuses, this, that, da, 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 all of which were like BS, right? And I mean, slowly, God put situation and circumstance that forced me to surrender, that made it so clear and inevitable that she was my wife. You could say it wasn't even my choice, but she was my wife. And now as my wife, I can't think of what the hell I was thinking. I can't think. I tell my wife, I'm so grateful that she had the courage, the grace, the kindness to be patient with my ego to just hold the space. And obviously I was willing to do the work. And so at this stage, I know she would die for me. I know my wife would die for me without a hesitation. And I would die for her without hesitation. And there's something in the transition when she went from girlfriend to wife that was I took on a responsibility for her life.
I've heard that. I heard that somewhere.
I took on a responsibility for her evolution. I took on a responsibility for her happiness. When someone's my girlfriend, well, your happiness is your happiness, my happiness is my happiness, which is true. We got to be responsible. But it went from, I am also now responsible for her life and her happiness, and her happiness needs to be as important as mine. And so there was a different surrender and responsibility in that becoming her husband, and the protection and the care and her happiness is as important as mine now. And not in a codependent way, right? But in a sacred way. And so the sacredness of that connection was different. The container too was different, because honestly, there's certain things that may have come up, just stuff that comes up that if she was my girlfriend, I'd be like, oh, I'm out, oh, I'm gone. But now you could say the container of marriage, not as a limitation, but as a sacred commitment, devotion, dedication. It was like, well, you can't just run away now. And so for me as a husband, it forced me to move through different levels of my ego as a husband, because there was a deeper connection, So what I would say to the women is, when you choose a man, potential husband,
we're like leaning in.
Yeah. I would say, when I speak to my girlfriends, I'm like, well, why did you date? Why? Because, well, he asked for my number. I'm like, what does that have to do with the situation? He asked for your number. Like, whoa, So there's a couple of, let's take it from the superficial level first. So when a man asks for your number, don't just give him your number because he's cute, he has a nice smile, he has a nice car. Like, no. When he asks for your number, stop. Ask him the first question before you go on a freaking date with him. If you're trying to screen for a husband, if you're trying to screen for a boyfriend, it's one thing. But if you're trying to screen for a husband, soulmate husband partner, first question before the number, what's your purpose in life? Ask him, what's your purpose in life? And if what he says doesn't inspire something in you as a woman energetically, don't even waste your time. If he says, what do you mean by purpose? Namaste away. Just keep
Namaste away.
Just keep moving, right? If something inside of you doesn't feel evoked, like, don't even go there. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your time.
Taking notes, Al?
What's that?
Sorry, I'm just telling her to take notes.
She's just being sassy.
The other question I would say is, again, screening for a husband potential is, would I trust this man with my life? Would I trust this man, his integrity, his being, his presence? Some obviously trust has to be earned over time, but does something in me evoke a certain trust with my life? Because when you, as a feminine being, as you do give yourself to love and devote yourself, you do it, whether you try to or not. It's your nature. You're giving your life, you're giving your heart, and that is valuable. And so, would I trust this man with my life? The other question I would invite every woman to sit with is, would I trust, this is a bit of maybe a controversial one, but would I trust this man to navigate my life, to direct my life more than myself? Not that he's going to, not that you can't yourself, not that you need him to, but could I trust his potential capacity to direct my life and guide me as a feminine being of energy more than I could myself? Because if you don't feel his integrity in his direction, because in order to guide you, to provide that space, he has to feel your heart. He has to feel your heart, not just his own superficial need. And he has to feel what you need more than just his own need, to take everything of what you need into consideration to even be able to do that. I would say only such a man deserves that level of trust. So do I feel his capacity to navigate and direct me as a masculine being more than myself? Because what I found is if a woman doesn't, she will never be able to fully relax and relax into her feminine nature, which is what's natural.
Because we want that as an option.
Because I think you want that.
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
we do.
And it's not that you can't do it yourself, but if you don't feel he has that capacity, you'll never relax in your body and your being in the safety, And so I think those are some husband filtering questions.
No, it's so true. Because I think nowadays we're so afraid to admit that we want to sometimes give them control. Because it's like, we don't always want that, but when we need it, we need it. And we need to just relax and release. Even thinking about like going to the airport. It's like, can I just be?
What really moved me about my wife, where I knew she was that on a soul level, but the depth of her, nothing. And guys may not say this, nothing. And again, you have to be careful because you have to choose the right man. That's the key. But nothing is as inspiring, sexy, moving to a man than the feminine trust. Now, not all men are trustable. So that's the key. You can't just trust any old dude. He's got to have some of these qualities we're talking about. But I knew there was a depth in which my wife trusted me, and a depth in which my wife was so vulnerable with me in opening her heart, that level of vulnerability for me as a man that was very strong melted my defense mechanisms. And in the face of that, I was I was helpless in a beautiful way. And that's what brought out from me, and even as a husband, an even deeper depth of wanting to take care of her, wanting to make sure she's good, because I'm like, I know I need to even more.
So as someone who's met their match, their soulmate, what do you think the highest expression of the masculine and feminine is?
The highest expression, in a nutshell, I would say the feminine, her nature is love, the masculine is direction, protection. And I think when they can both come together and give those unique gifts, it's a blessing, it's a real blessing for sure. But I think we have to, as human beings, work through our own layers and patterns to be able to allow ourselves to rest into our true nature, because I think in so many ways we've been conditioned out of our nature to function, survive, protect, avoid pain, deal with parents and ways in which needs weren't met, So I think in many ways we're covered up and layered. Like even for me, before I met my wife, one of the things I had to move through and navigate through with my wife to be able to allow the fullness of marriage and connection and surrender and to get to we are husband and wife, right? I grew up taking care of everybody. I grew up preacher's kid. I grew up taking care of my mother and taking care of my mother's emotional needs, the emotional husband for my mother, basically. And so there was a pattern inside of me that didn't really feel I could depend on anyone, because no one's really there for me. I have to be there for myself. So I grew up independent. Like I don't need anybody, don't need help, don't need you, I don't need anyone. I'll just freaking do it myself. which made me very successful, but didn't allow me to receive. And so I didn't really, even though I thought I didn't really let love in, because there's a part of me that didn't want to get disappointed. Because if I let you in and you're not there, it's going to be disappointing. And so when I met my wife, this was another thing that I knew, okay, she's my wife, is because for the first time in my life, she didn't disappoint me. You know, I let go and I surrendered, and I fought it for a bit, but she was there. Even when we had arguments and you kind of have reasons to be like, well, fuck you. She still showed up, pissed off, mad, upset, you know, sometimes with a reason to not like do the thing. She still did it. And each time it just developed a level of trust. It developed such a profound level of trust in, oh, I can trust her. I can, as a man, I can trust her with my heart. And that's what also evoked a surrender of knowing, you know?
I think also too, when you just go through the darkness with someone, it's just like, you're in this with me. At least that's how we felt.
Yeah.
I trust her enough to show her my darkest parts, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking about the friend recently. What an honor it is to see someone's little monster inside, because it means that
That's love.
That's love. It
That's
means
love.
they trust you.
Yeah, real love is not fantasy.
Yeah.
You know, real love is not fantasy or projection. Real love, I think, is when you can see who someone is, who someone isn't, where they are, where they're not. You see the potential, but you see the reality of their darkness, and you can still love that, right? And still be with that and say, yeah, I'm willing to love through and take the journey with this person despite everything I see. That's love. But I would say that the person has to be willing. That's the key. They have to be willing to do the inner work, to heal, to evolve, to grow. Because if you're just unconditionally loving someone that is stuck or unwilling to take responsibility, then nothing will shift. You know? So we're talking about potential, right? I think one of the most beautiful qualities that women have is your capacity to see the unseen, your capacity to see the multidimensional layers of who a man is, life, but in this case, let's say a man, who a man is. And you can see what he can be before he can see it himself. You have the ability to see. And I think one of the greatest gifts that you can gift a man is that ability to see his greatness. But the danger is you cannot fall in love with his potential. Because if you fall in love with his potential, I see a lot of women in relationship with a man's potential, not who he really is. So it ends up being a kind of fantasy relationship versus a reality-based relationship. And that's when it gets dangerous. So I think it's beautiful to see his potential, but you have to ask yourself, if he doesn't change, if he never changes, could I be okay with that? And if you can't be, I mean, obviously you'd like him to evolve, but if he doesn't change and you can say, I'm okay with that, then there's potential. Yeah. And so the man, when you see his potential, you see his greatness, the real man, the right man, will be willing to do the mental, emotional, psychological, therapeutic, spiritual work to clear himself so that he can live into the potential that you're seeing. So the potential that you see as a woman in him is an invitation for him to step into that next, it's a portal for him to step into that next level of himself. But he has to be willing to do the work in reality.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, did you go to therapy? Did you do the work? Did you actually do it? Or because a lot of guys don't do the work, right? They don't do the real work that it actually takes to shift.
They just like to be in the light of their potential. They don't actually like to merge
because it feels good.
It feels good
to be loved. It feels good to be affirmed. It feels good. But if you're not a woman, you're like, she is setting herself up for pain and suffering if he's not willing to do the real work in the real world to shift and change.
Do you hear that, girls?
Yeah.
You looking at potential? It's a part of
because a lot of
you.
women will say, well, two things I've heard women say. When he gets to know me, he'll change. or I can change him. And so, like my love can change him, which is why I see a lot of these movies where you see that dynamic, like my love can change him. It's like, no, if he's not willing to change and ready to change, then it may not be enough to change him. So he has to be willing, that's the thing.
So what was that moment? You see your death in her heart.
I see my death clearly.
She's like, I gotta go back to that.
No, I do. I need to circle back. And you've loved women before this, so I'm sure that's not the first time you've seen your death, or maybe.
Yeah, no, it's not the first time.
So what is that moment that makes you choose to die, basically?
I think there was a deep underlying knowing when I first met her of like this. It's like my book. It's like, oh, there's something here. There's something here. And so that was pulling me. There was something pulling. So that was one. Now I tried to resist for a bit, right? If I'm going to be honest, I would say that the universe, God, the divine intelligence, orchestrated a whole bunch of events that made shit fall apart in aspects of my life that forced me to depend on her.
Oh, interesting.
Forced me.
Huh.
I've never said this publicly, but there was like one of the people that were my assistants on my team, they left, right? And then I was hiring other people. And so my girlfriend then, my wife now, my girlfriend then had just come. I said, come to LA for 2 months. Let's see if we're a fit. That's sort of the thing I was telling myself, even though my soul knew she was my wife, right? Come for 2 months and we'll see. And so she arrives, and I have a new person on my team that was managing things. And she arrives, you think I would be happy, which I was, but like my ego was like, oh shit, I'm closer to death. My death is imminent. Like if she was a bitch, she was mean, she was, something, I would have a good reason. Like nothing. Like it's funny. The first time we spent a week together was in Tulum, right? It was a blissful week. Like no triggers, no fighting, no like red flag, like just pure bliss. You would think I would be happy, but I went to her and I said, I went to her and I said, I don't know, like, what, gotta process stuff, gotta what's going, she said, why does love need to be hard? I thought to myself, yeah, why does love need to be hard? So when she comes to LA, again, she's just open and loving, just ready to love. And so that moment was when my ego was having a moment of like, scanning for reasons, scanning for some bullshit, something, and almost convincing myself maybe she's not it, even though I knew she was. Maybe she's not, whatever the reasons were. And the person who was the new person on my team managing shit left after like 1 week.
Oof.
So I come home like, oh shit.
Yeah.
The hell, I don't know anything about this stuff. And I came home very emotional. And she said, what's wrong? Because she knew. You women know things. And I said, this and this happened, and there's a freaking disaster, and I can't believe it, all of this stuff. And the way things were left is a mess. She didn't flinch. This girl, didn't flinch. She looked at me and she said, okay. She rolled her sleeves up, opened the freaking laptop, said, what do we need to do? She doesn't know anything about anything. What do we need to do? Let's get to work. And she didn't leave my side, literally for months. And so you could say, I was resisting. God just stripped shit apart, forced me to depend, forced. And that's when I saw God made me see who she really was. And that's when I saw, oh, I see who she is. How the hell did I miss the strength, the loyalty, the dedication, the resilience? All of that was in her. God showed it to me. It's like, see her. You idiot. You can't even see her. And I'm like, how did I miss who she really was? You know? And that's when, for the next months, I saw, because the way she backed me up, the way she served everything was like it was for her. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, I'm helping you out. It was like, let's go. Wow. And that was when I knew. It was like, wow. It was a visceral, embodied feeling of that was so profoundly healing. And that's when I knew. And so after 2 months, I was like, well, it doesn't feel right that you kind of go back to Brazil, you know? I was like 98. So why don't you stay for like another 2 months? And then, well, you know, that might mean it means one thing. So that's what led to making it official, because in that depth of devotion, here's what happened for me. There was such a depth of devotion from her part that she didn't feel like a girlfriend anymore. Because my happiness and my everything was equal to hers. And so for me to be like, well, I'll tell you, she's my girlfriend. It just kind of felt wrong. It just energetically didn't feel right anymore. And what she was giving me of her being was no longer girlfriend. So for me to continue saying she's a girlfriend and treating her like that was out of integrity. And that's when it just kind of came into alignment. And I knew, like, this is what it is, you know?
Can we talk about when it was time to propose?
When it was time to propose?
What did that
This is a love episode.
I'm like, sorry, I just want to go in there.
You know what's been interesting? Because on one level with my wife, things have been, you know what the beauty has been is in the ordinary. That's what's beautiful. Here's another thing, because it's kind of connected, is you can be in love on vacation, right? In Thailand, and in Bali, and in Egypt. It's epic experiences, right? But that's 10% of the time. The real sustainability, and I maybe never really understood this before, but the real sustainability of marriage is in the everyday moments. And what I learned with her was the beauty of the everyday and the beauty of the ordinary moments of life. Just taking a walk, you know, having a cup of tea at Earth Cafe, doing nothing, you know, just the everyday was just ordinarily lovely and beautiful. And that's when I understood, wow, to have a marriage work, you got to have the 90% straight, not just the 10% epic. And the 90% was so easeful and graceful and joyful. That doesn't mean there's not moments of static and conflict, but even the conflict was ordinary. And, you know, it's like, okay, it doesn't mean I'm leaving. It just means we have a moment. And so the beauty of the ordinary was very apparent for me. And I thought, oh, I could live this with someone every day. That's what made it real, you know? And so it's funny because I proposed to my wife in Joshua Tree on my birthday.
Oh,
yeah, on my birthday, the sun setting. And that's how it came around, you know? Yeah, and it was just when we got married, it was just her and I.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was, to be honest, the most beautiful thing, because we just, you know, on a Monday, we're like, well, I guess we got to do this thing, right? And like the time is ticking, and well, I guess you got to call up a court, figure out what's where, and they can get you married on Thursday, and it's Monday today. Yeah, let's do it. And what was beautiful was it didn't feel like a big deal. It just felt like, of course, that's what was beautiful. It just felt like another ordinary step that was just so normal.
Wow.
And natural. And it's the greatest gift.
It seems to be mirroring those moments you had with your mom as well, that realization of, and there's this beautiful quote that stuck with me literally this week, and it says, happiness is simple, but simple can be difficult for our brains to wrap around. So it makes sense, like when things just feel normal, not this incredible euphoric experience, that's actually when it's aligned.
Yes. I think that's when it's really aligned, because that's when you can live it, and it's life, right? It's life.
And how, asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. Let's go.
Like, is this for me or you?
No, I know. That's why I looked at you to confuse everyone. When it comes to a wedding and stuff, because what I've realized in my own career, you know, social gatherings, and you as well, it's kind of a part of the job.
Yeah.
And I've noticed even for a birthday party, let's say, it feels like it's for everyone else.
That's the thing.
And I've been battling that recently because I've been going to weddings, and it feels, it feels like they're working. They're running around taking photos. Everyone's saying hi to them. It's very exhausting. And I always felt like, what is that alternative? And when you said that, I was like, oh, okay, he's probably feeling that as well.
Yeah. For me, because part of our life is out there, right? And also as a young boy, I grew up kind of in the public in a certain way with my father and on stage with my father, that, and maybe it's my own, tendency, because my father was also a bit more like, hey, showing people, but behind the scenes wasn't really there, right? Maybe that's some of it as well. But in terms of wedding, so many of these things I think are for other people. And I see so many, and it's not wrong. I mean, people can have whatever experience they want to have. Like I remember I was at a friend's wedding and he was so stressed. I'm like, dude, it's your freaking day. Like, we're stressing for who? The cake? Who cares if the cake is shit? Yeah. Who cares if the cake doesn't show up? All that matters is your love. Yeah. And this is also when I knew this was my wife, okay? Because I'm like, I don't want some big wedding with 400 people, and I'm basically putting on a performance, professing my love in front of 400. She knows I love her. Why do I need to do an act in a script in front of 400 people? I have nothing to prove to 400 people. The only thing that matters is me and her. That's it. That she knows I love her. I know she loves me. We're good. We're bonded. Spend $400,000 for everyone else to eat cake. For what? For what? Right?
For what?
For what? Let's take that 100,000, 50,000 and go on a vacation. Invest it in crypto, something, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum, something. Let's go. Right? And so I think I got to the point where I stopped living my life for people, and I never wanted I'm like, I don't want a wedding. I don't even want a big wedding. I don't want nothing. And I don't know, 2 months into dating, it came up, and she's like, no, I don't want a big wedding. I don't. I'm like, you don't? Like, you're one of the first woman I've met that's like, you don't want a big wedding with a church? No. And so in that sense, we were very much aligned. And so it was just her and I together.
That's so
being
romantic.
Together, and just me and her. No one else. And it was so meaningful because the marriage is between her and I. Yeah. So who else matters?
Yeah.
And so for me, even with our son, we don't post him on social media. We don't post pictures of him because number one, he's not necessarily consenting, and he hasn't asked for it, and he's not a toy, and so it's like, why? And so energetically, what I see on social media sometimes is people living their life for validation, living their life. Sometimes, a lot of the times.
Are you sure?
More
than sometimes.
living their life trying to explain themselves to people that don't really care, right? And it takes so much energy. Yeah. And so, I just live my life for my life, and we live our life together, and we tend not to be posting stuff. So for me, social media is a form of just adding value to people and sharing my work more than anything. And so, we didn't post my son's birthday party and this and that. It's like, why? Who am I posting it for? Yeah. Really? You know?
And it's interesting how you can speak about your personal life, but from a lens of a teacher lens, as opposed to an exposure lens. And I'm currently right now finding that balance, because I'm it feels so icky to essentially use
pimp your life.
Yeah, pimp your own life.
I hate to use that word, but it's pimp your life for likes.
It's a nuanced difference, but it makes the whole world, because people get to know you without you feeling exposed.
Yes.
And that combination, it's hard to acquire.
And some things are sacred.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of what I look at and maybe saddens me is is nothing sacred anymore? Yeah. I make love to my wife. Do I have to put a video up? I have coffee with her. Do I have to show the world? It's is anything sacred? And do things exist if we don't show it to the world? And so for me, it's certain things are sacred.
Yeah.
And keeping those, I enjoy keeping those things sacred, the energy of them at the container for my son, my wife, my family, and certain experiences. So
it's the healthiest way to use social media nowadays, because I think we're all a little confused, especially younger people coming up. And for me personally, I was brought into the spotlight in a relationship, and the spotlight was on the relationship. Yeah. And so that was crazy, because it was smoke and mirrors. I didn't know what was real and what wasn't. And I only wanted to believe the good things so badly because it looked so good. And so, and I think that's the conversation that we're having right now with technology, is it's we're going to get to a place where it's going to be hard to decipher what's real and what's not. And this is where, when you talk about integrity and when you talk about sacredness, that's when those things come into play. Because if we don't have that, then we don't know how to differentiate what's real and what's not. And especially with technology nowadays. The movie I was just in, it's all about technology, and it's about kind of this Neuralink technology where it will go into your brain and it will bring up these subconscious things. So if you don't work on them now, technology is going to expose them later. And we see this on social media, and now it's only going to get more and more intense in that way. So these are all very good things for people to hear, because this is really relevant right now. And even with the younger girls that, we mentor in the wellness community, just really making sure that they know, is this bringing value into my life, or is this just making my life more convenient? And those two separation help me kind of keep in line with still being in the public eye, and yet having boundaries to those eyes. It's a crazy balance, though. Every day I'm
it is. And I want to hear you talk more about your work with your clients too, because I feel like you're also counteracting that by bringing people back to their humanity. And you probably don't know this, but you actually were the first example I saw of someone really living from their intuition. I remember sitting across from you, and you were like, yeah, my soul told me to go to China. I went to China.
Wow.
And I'd never heard someone talk that way. And I was like, how can you even hear your soul? Because I was so just
sound like.
Sounds like. But I know you do these incredible intensives. And so I just want you to talk a bit about your work, because I think it's so needed on the planet right now.
One thing I do want to say about intuition, I think real quick, is we all have it. Deep down, we all know. We all know. You already know. There's a part of us that knows everything, because at the deepest level, we are everything. You meet that person, it's you feel that knot in your stomach. I remember 14 years ago meeting a woman in a parking lot, speaking to a friend. It's stay away. It's did I listen? No, it's give me your number. Let's have tea. Now we're in a relationship. I'm I knew it, but I didn't listen. And so we all have that intuition, but I think our conditioning is what really clouds the connection to the intuition and our capacity to really discern what is this flow of energy really meaning. And I think our intuition emerges maybe it's a subtle feeling, a subtle sensation, a subtle feeling, a voice, small voice, a loud voice, physical sensation, right? That can be how intuition speaks. An image, right? It can emerge as a dream. It can emerge in an external way because dreams are the way your subconscious speaks to you. It can emerge, I think, in the external, since everything is energy, and from that sense, everything is interacting with itself. So you might be driving on Wilshire Boulevard and see a license plate, that says, yes, do it. That could be the energetic intuition of the universe reflecting to you what you know as well, or a billboard. And so I think many times we're just not paying attention, and our filter to our intuition is clouded, right? Because we're conditioned. And so you could say the essence of what I do is I uncondition people. I uncoach, uncondition, unteach, untrain, because I think at the deepest level, we are all already, we are whole, perfect, and complete beings, every single one of us. Like I look at my child now and I think we were all like this once, like Hitler, Pablo Escobar, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Jake Paul, doesn't matter, Anthony Joshua, doesn't matter who. We were all these pure balls of pure light. Jump on a table. We were free. We would dance naked. We didn't care what we looked like. We were just beingness. And so what happens to us? We incarnate into this human experience and we meet our parents, and God bless them. They're just doing the best that they know how to do based on their parents and their childhood and their traumas and their grandparents and generational conditioning and trauma. So now we're incarnated into a preset framework of conditioning, and we don't even know. And maybe dad is crazy. Maybe mom's an alcoholic. Maybe they're fighting all the time. Maybe there's a divorce, and maybe they were great people, but they just didn't know how to meet our emotional needs in some way. And that was painful. And so I think the first thing that happens is slowly, unconsciously, we learn all sorts of strategies to shut down, disconnect, suppress, and not feel. And before you know it, layers and layers of unfelt feeling build up that kind of disconnects us from our essence, from our knowing, from our light. And we erect walls around our heart to just function and survive. And now we're trapped inside of this matrix of mechanized conditioning, right? And then we also unconsciously learn how to be in the world. We look at our parents and our caregivers around us. Who do I need to be in order to be loved? Who do I need to be to get mom to love me? For me, it was, I'll be a good boy. I'll be perfect. I'll take care of everybody. I'll be the responsible one. Okay, I'll be that. But in doing that, there's a cost, because I had to suppress so many layers of my truth. I felt angry. I felt mad. Can't acknowledge that. I have to smile. I have to be sweet. I have to be kind. And so we've all developed a role, a mask, a persona, a way of being in the world that we've kind of learned to contort ourselves to become this version of ourselves to get love and validation and approval. And the version of ourselves that we become is who we think we are. And we don't realize it's just a pattern of conditioning. And the degree to which we are conditioned is the degree to which we're not free to truly express who we are and what we are, our voice, our creativity, our aliveness, our power. And when we're carrying layers and layers of unfelt feeling and we're locked inside of the prison of the persona, how do we even see what's there? How do we even sense what's there? How do we even intuit what's there? We can't. We're disconnected from the intuition that's already flowing. And so essentially what I do in my work is I create experiences in an environment that is designed to, let's say, intensely bring up your patterns of conditioning so that you can see them. And I help you over days process those layers through. And so that's the essence of what I do. I've done it for 20 years now, 21 years now, since I was a kid, and started out one-on-one, no idea what I was doing. And the work evolved and then went into small groups and these journeys I did in India. I did the journey in India where I would take away your money, take away your passport. You'd have a backpack, a pair of clothes, stuck with me for 12 days. And I take you through a 12-day journey that was designed to uncondition you. It was called the Liberation Experience. And then from that, people said, can you take a group to India? And I'm like, I'm not taking a group to India, but I ended up going to Bali. And then in Bali in 2010, I think it was, 2011, I created a journey called Boundless Bliss, and that was a 12-day process of unconditioning people. So, we're all free. That we've just lost touch with the freedom. So for me, the process of evolution is not becoming who we are, because you can't become what you are. We already are what we are at the deepest level. We're already divine. We're already pure light. It might be more about removing the layers of conditioning that clouds our ability to feel, connect, rest in what we are, and live that.
Do you think it's possible to get back to that state your son is in, like to fully uncondition? Do you feel like you've gotten through most of your conditioning?
I do feel, I would say that essential nature we've never lost it. So it's always there. And so I think life is the process and the mechanism of having the experience to clear the layers away. So we come in pure, then we get conditioned, and depending on the work we do, we have the opportunity to remove the layers to clear that. And I think depending on our intention, our commitment, and our work, I think we have the ability to return to that essential nature. Not perfection, right? Because I think there's no perfection at the level of the personality. Yeah. So I don't think it's about we're ever perfect, but I think we can clear away layers of conditioning and karma and patterns inside of us, because I think we all incarnate into a energetic momentum stream of preset karma that has flowed from generations. And so I would say maybe 33% of our life, as a metaphor, is determined by the karmic momentum stream of energy that was set into motion from generations and generations and addictions, patterns, secrets, things that weren't dealt with. That energy is what we're born into. And so, someone is born Bill Gates' daughter, someone is born in a favela in Rio. There's a karmic energy there. And then there's our own conditioning from our childhood. And so just because you're born into a certain karmic stream of momentum doesn't mean you're stuck, right? Because I think the other pillar and element that affects our evolution is our intention, our commitment, and our will. And that's where we get to do the inner work and the inner healing to clear, to heal, to transform, and apply ourselves so that we can fulfill the potential of karmic momentum and clear the sort of effects of karmic momentum. And I think the other third would be the environment that we grow in, the location, the house, the environment, the space, the circumstance. So those are the three elements.
How does duality play into identity or unconditioning? Because we know it from a perspective of we get to have the light because we have the dark.
Yes.
Is it kind of like that conditioning gives us the gratitude to love that purity, and it's more like a dance back and forth? Or is it our goal to get to that purity again and then hold it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the purity is always inside of us.
Okay.
So we never lose that purity. We might lose access to it or the expression of it, but I feel as though there is always a deep intuitive sense that we have of that purity. That's why I think we're so drawn to, when we look into a baby's eyes, you could be the most unpure person, right? When you look into a baby's eyes, it evokes something from even the most unpure. Even Pablo Escobar loved his kid. There's that scene, right, in Narcos. I don't know if you've seen it, but where he's on the run and then his kid is freezing. And he loves her so much, he empties a bag of $2 million in cash, throws it in the fireplace to create warmth for his daughter. There's something inside of us all that has a pure essence, And so I think the purity is always there. And I think there's so many of the attempts, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's addictions, there's a part of us that is often trying to reach for that connection in some way, But yeah, we are in a realm of density, and a realm of limitation in this dualistic realm. Like, this is a limited realm. But I think the limitation is designed to provide that friction to force us to access, like, the challenges, the problems, the darkness, the difficulties will force you to, if you're going to evolve, will force you to go inside to access your light, your unlimited nature. I think even like the darkness, right? Even the darkness in life is a gift, because when life is dark and you look around and you can't see anything, you feel lost. If you just stay there, you're going to stay stuck. But I think that the purpose of the darkness is it forces you to go within, to find, like, who am I really? It forces you to ask deeper questions. It forces you to go inside. That will force you to connect with the light of your being and true essence. It reveals the light inside of you.
Yeah. And in a way, you take responsibility for the darkness because it serves as a fuel, because I think we also are in a society right now where playing the victim feels very alluring.
Yes.
Yes.
There are no victims. Oh, I don't know.
Can you expand on that?
Go.
You just opened Pandora's box.
My mother had very similar opinions with that as well.
I think, look, we live in a world of infinitely valid, but simultaneously contradictory realities inherent in the nature of life. So is it this or is it that? It's both. To me, life is that paradox. It's a movie, it's real, but it's not real. It's serious, but it's not serious. And so it's infinitely valid, but simultaneously contradictory realities. And so on one level, does bad shit happen? Yeah, it does. Does it need to be addressed? Yes, it does. Do some people need to be held accountable and go to prison? Yes, they do. Do I want those things to happen? No, on one level, right? But on that deeper, multidimensional, let's say soul level, there are no victims. Because the way I see it, life is a school. It's like a university for our soul's evolution. And as souls, we incarnate into this human experience in order to learn, in order to grow, in order to evolve. And on one level, as the way our culture is set up, we're very much focused on the one-dimensional level of, like, what happened, what didn't happen, you made it, you succeeded, you got the $1 million, you got the car, you got the house, you're a success. That's the goal line, the one-dimensional level of life. But underneath that is, let's say, the soul line, right? And underneath every dimension of experience, I would say there is the lesson that your soul is seeking to learn through that experience. And that experience is just the vehicle for your soul's learning. And so if we're truly souls, then really the only thing that's going on in this play of life is growth and evolution. We just forgot. And we think it's, waking up, going to work, doing this, doing that, making money. That it's all great. Let's celebrate. Let's enjoy all of this and savor it. And it's beautiful. But at the end of the day, you take none of it with you, other than the evolution of your consciousness. And so the reason I say there's no victims is just some people are in a harder classroom. Some people are in a different grade, not better or worse. They just have different lessons. I remember one time I was in India for the first time. And the first time I went to India with a backpack, shaved my head, had one pair of clothes, $1,000, said I was not coming back to America until I found certain answers for myself. And India cracked me open because I was expecting this utopia of, India, incense and gurus and everything holy. And it was shit. I was like, get me out of this hellhole. It's dirt and bad air and, poor people everywhere. And I mean, I've since been to India many times and I love India. But the first time I was resisting. And I remember there's one time I saw, every day I would see poor people and handicapped people. And every day was worse. Just when you thought you couldn't see anything worse, it was worse. And one day I saw this guy in the middle of Delhi. I was sitting on a bench, exhausted. I see this guy in the middle of Delhi and he's crawling, like he's deformed in such a way that you wouldn't believe, like a spider, like his hands and knees and head was up and he was crawling. And I started crying because I felt so sorry for him. Poor him. And I just thought it was so wrong and so bad. And just, how could God do this? And I was seeing him as a victim. And in my kind of looking down, thinking I'm being sympathetic, feeling sorry for him, I remember hearing this voice. And it was like, what if he is in the PhD program and you are in kindergarten? I'm like, you're healthy, you look okay, you're strong, you don't have any issues. And this dude is in the high level PhD program. And so why are you feeling sorry for him when he's in the harder, he's playing the higher level of the video game, And so I think when we start looking through the lens of life through the soul, we start seeing life differently, And so now I don't see victims. I feel compassion for what people are going through, but I've cultivated a deep respect of like, wow, what a lesson that your soul is going through in this human experience. Like, I don't know if I could deal with that lesson. Like what, like that is a high level of the school of life. Wow. And so I have respect for people that go through the challenges, When I used to see them as victims and feel sorry for them, I have a tremendous respect for their soul's choice and capacity to go through that experience. And I think we're all seeking to learn something through everything. Everything is our teacher, even when we don't think it, And so I think when we go through difficult moments or challenging moments, we can see ourselves as a victim, like, well, why am I going through this? And why God doesn't love me, Or we can step back and ask ourselves, well, why am I going through this? And what is my soul seeking to learn? And what has my soul been unwilling to learn? And what is the lesson? Because I think when we can really learn the lesson where we are with who we're with, that is the key that unlocks the next level of our life. Mm. That's the key that unlocks the next level of blessings and manifestation, peace, even where we're at, we could take it to a deeper spiritual level. What is the karma that my soul is working out here from generations? Sometimes I think we play out unresolved generational energies and addictions and karma. And, there's moments where we will feel certain impulses of like, why do I feel this tendency? Why do I feel what? Some of it's not even ours. And so we can be like, I'm just a victim, or go, okay, what is this energy? And who does it belong to? Oh, maybe my uncle, maybe my grandfather. Oh, and you can be a victim to it or say, okay, let me work this out within myself and free myself from this energy, And that's, I think, what is how we shift our karma and draw in different experiences. But all lessons are repeated until learned, And if life is a school, then, unlike traditional school where you have like 12 grades and you go to university, you could say the universe maybe doesn't care how long it takes for you to get the lessons. You just could take you 50 years, 100 years, 70 lifetimes, if there is such a thing, but the only thing that's going on is our evolution.
Is there a tool or practice that you recommend anyone do? Because there's so much wisdom here, but I want them to be able to apply it somehow.
Yeah. Let's see. Two things. Maybe, I don't know if we talked about this last time, but I'm going to try to condense it. But the first practice that I sit with a lot these days is just feeling my death.
Oh, no.
It's like,
I love that.
Oh, no.
It's like you are going to die.
This girl has been doing that for
You
a
are
minute.
going to die, and just feel your death.
Wow.
Because we all know we're going to die. We know, but we live like we're not.
Yeah.
And then when shit happens, we're like, oh my God, we knew, And I think COVID was, you could say, a spiritual death process, that the universe offered us to feel our death. And it freaked a lot of people out. And so every day, feel your death. Like, you're going to die. Like, if today was the last day, not in some trite way, but if you really feel it, like, What would I regret? What's ungiven? What's unsaid? What's unexpressed? Like what's uncreated? To just feel your death for a moment, not in a morbid way, but in a transformational way. I think for me, what that does is it definitely, the shit I waste my time on is just, that's not, it gets things clear pretty quickly. Like, is this
I'm going to text my sister after this.
Is this even important? You know? Yeah. Is this even important? Why am I even caring what this person is thinking? It's like, if I were to die, I wouldn't care. Just, okay, perspective check. And so feeling your death, I think, is a daily thing that I've cultivated, especially since my mother died and my father passed away. It's like, it's real, you know? And now that I have a son, it's like every day counts with him, you know, every moment counts, every second counts. And it's just the fierce urgency of living is what it inspires. So I would just say feeling it. And the other one is just looking at what lies you're telling yourself. You know, as human beings, we lie to ourselves all the time. We've been conditioned to lie to ourselves from when we were children, just because of the conditioning that I talked about. But we lie to ourselves. We stay in relationships that we know is not right. We do stuff that we hate doing for work. We say yes when we mean no to make people happy, and wonder why we're in pain, or why we feel mad at ourselves and don't trust ourselves, but we're out of integrity with ourselves, you know? And so, or why we don't believe ourselves when we have dreams, because how do we believe ourselves when we've been betraying ourselves? And so I would invite everyone to sort of do an inventory of where are you, like, what lies are you telling? What are you pretending to not know? What is it costing you? And to feel it. Like, there is no truth, there is no freedom without truth. You can pray, you can meditate, you can do yoga, you can raise your kundalini, you can open your mind, you can do everything. But if you're bullshitting yourself, nothing will change. You can go to God and pray. God will say, please exit the temple and go tell the truth. You know, like, don't ask me to clear up the shit you haven't dealt with. It's like God's not having any of that. So I think if we can really, for me, truth is real yoga. Truth is real spirituality. Truth is real. Like, some of us, we need to stop reading and start just telling the truth, because that's the real spiritual practice, you know? And so I think if we can really start doing that, and it might mean, okay, you don't have to take action immediately, because sometimes the consequences can be scary. Like, oh my God, I don't want to tell the truth, because does that mean I have to break up? Does that mean I have to? It just might mean saying, you know what, I'm not in love anymore. This relationship it's not aligned. And just feel what that brings up. Maybe it leads to a conversation. Maybe it leads to a breakthrough. Maybe it leads to breaking up. Maybe it's, I have a problem with alcohol. Just own it. Like, I think I have a problem. I have a problem with weed. Just feel that and stop denying, like, oh, I could quit at any moment. No, I have a problem with XYZ. Just feel that. To me, it's the truth without judgment, right? It's the truth that you can't change anything if you're not acknowledging where you're at. And to me, the beginning of change is just to tell the truth to yourself about where you are at. That's the starting point. So I think if we could just tell the truth, and sometimes people might say, well, how do I know if I'm lying to myself, if I'm lying to myself? How do I know? If I'm bullshitting myself, how do I know? I don't know. When we're lying to ourselves, it's painful. Pain is the feedback on some way. Emotional pain. You feel depressed, you feel sad, you feel mad, you feel angry, right? There's some emotional pain that could be a signal. Physical pain, right? This backache, shoulder ache, your subconscious is speaking to you about something that's not aligned. Dis-ease. Life stops flowing, right? Because you've blocked the flow of energy in holding back the truth. So life stops flowing. That could be another way. Maybe lastly, you start attracting people into your life that, why do I keep attracting angry people? Why do I keep attracting depressed people? Because they're reflecting to you your own disowned feeling. And so that could be a sign. These could be some signs of how you know you might be lying to yourself if you're not sure you are. But I think that it's the truth that sets us free. And if we have to want the truth more than we want what we have. We have to want the truth more than we want what we think we want. And so I would ask everyone this question. I asked this question at the beginning of some of my events. What do you want more than anything else? What is it you want more than anything else? Because we say we want to be free. We say we want love. We say we want freedom. But do we? Most of us, we want our suffering. We want to be liked. We want validation. We want that relationship. I want to be free, but I would rather have that relationship, you know? Do we really want to be free? Because freedom is not free. It requires that we let go of what's no longer aligned. It's not free. It requires that we surrender, that we let go. And I think when we do, like, the next level of our life requires the next level of who we are, which requires that we let go. Most of us, we hold on to what's not working. And so the truth is, I think, a daily reflection point of transformation. Like, what lies am I telling myself? Just feel that.
Yeah. That was by far some of the most incredible wisdom we've had on this show. So thank you for giving us that. And me and her are going to have some reflection time later. And I feel like that wraps perfectly back around with your book, The Magic of Surrender. You guys,
Yeah.
you've just heard him talk for almost 2 hours. Now you know this is a beautiful wisdom. It's worth it. We were joking because we were like, we know for a fact this wasn't a photo shoot. This was just you in a moment and someone captured it.
Yeah, interlude.
And he was like, that'll be a perfect book cover.
That's perfect.
That's
and when is your retreat?
Yeah,
I don't know if retreat's the right word.
Bali retreat, Boundless Bliss Bali retreat I'm doing is in December the 5th through the 16th. Probably is going to be my final one. I've done 23 of these events. July will be 23, December will be 24. So I've done 23-ish, maybe at the time of this release, since 2011, hundreds and hundreds of folks from all around the world. But I'm feeling a calling, as I mentioned, like what's calling me. I'm feeling like this will be the final one in December.
Did you guys
I
hear
know
that?
what we're doing.
We'll be there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
absolutely. And then how can people, obviously we'll have everything in the bio, but how can people find
just
your
say hi on
information?
Instagram, Kute Blackson, my name. Say hola. My podcast, Soul Talk. Facebook, Kute Love Now. The book, The Magic of Surrender. My website, kuteblackson.com.
Beautiful.
Thank you. It is such an honor
Love
to
you
know
both.
you and be influenced by just your presence and everything you
I
say.
know.
I was telling my wife the other day about her, and I said if I ever had a little sister, I think she would be like Allie.
Oh,
So you're officially my little sister.
I don't have words.
All right. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for tuning in. This was such a special episode, and we will see you soon.